Ethan Blake leaned back against the bar, the vibrant energy of Manhattan pulsing around him. It was a Friday night, and the city was alive with the sounds of laughter, clinking glasses, and upbeat music. He had just received a promotion at Hart Marketing, and his friends had insisted on a celebration. The neon lights flickered above, casting a warm glow on their faces as they toasted to his success. As he sipped his whiskey, Ethan felt a mix of excitement and nervousness. He was ambitious and driven, always focused on climbing the corporate ladder, but tonight felt different. The atmosphere was electric, and he was ready to let loose. His friends were animatedly discussing their weekend plans when Ethan's gaze drifted across the bar. That's when he saw him. Julian Hart stood at the opposite end, effortlessly commanding attention. With his tousled dark hair and piercing blue eyes, he exuded confidence and charisma. Dressed in a tailored suit that accentuated his athletic build, Julian appeared both powerful and approachable. Ethan's heart raced as their eyes met for a fleeting moment before Julian turned back to his conversation. "Who's that?" Ethan asked Maya, his best friend and confidant, nudging her with his elbow. Maya followed his gaze and grinned. "That's Julian Hart, the boss man himself. He's known for being tough but fair. You should go talk to him." Ethan hesitated for a moment, feeling a mix of admiration and intimidation. But the whiskey coursing through his veins gave him courage. "Why not?" he said with a playful smirk. He pushed off from the bar and made his way toward Julian, who was now laughing at something one of his colleagues had said. As Ethan approached, he felt a surge of confidence wash over him. "Excuse me," he said, flashing a charming smile. "I couldn't help but notice you from across the bar. I'm Ethan." Julian turned to face him, his expression shifting from surprise to intrigue. "Ethan Blake," he replied smoothly, extending his hand. "Congratulations on your promotion." "Thanks. I appreciate it," Ethan replied, shaking Julian's hand firmly. There was an undeniable spark between them, a connection that sent shivers down Ethan's spine. They chatted effortlessly, discovering shared interests in travel and music while exchanging playful banter that made Ethan laugh more than he had in weeks. Time seemed to slip away as they delved deeper into conversation, oblivious to the world around them. As the night wore on, Ethan felt drawn to Julian in a way he hadn't experienced before. The chemistry between them was palpable, every glance lingered just a moment too long, every touch electric. Eventually, Julian leaned closer, lowering his voice as if sharing a secret. "Want to get out of here? I know a place we can go," he suggested with a mischievous glint in his eyes. Ethan's heart raced at the invitation. He nodded eagerly, feeling a thrill of excitement mixed with anticipation. They left the bar together, stepping into the cool night air of New York City. Julian led Ethan through winding streets until they reached an upscale apartment building in the heart of Manhattan. The doorman greeted Julian with respect as they entered the lobby. Ethan couldn't help but feel slightly awed by Julian's presence. He seemed to belong to this world of luxury and power. Once inside Julian's apartment, an elegant space adorned with modern art and sweeping views of the skyline, Ethan felt both exhilarated and nervous. Julian poured them both glasses of wine and they settled onto the plush couch. Their conversation flowed naturally again until it took on an unmistakable tension. Julian leaned closer, their faces inches apart as he brushed his fingers against Ethan's arm. "You're even more captivating up close," he murmured. Ethan felt heat rise in his cheeks as desire surged within him. "I could say the same about you," he replied softly. In that moment, all barriers fell away as they leaned into each other, lips meeting in a passionate kiss that ignited every nerve ending in Ethan's body. It was intoxicating. His head spun as Julian deepened the kiss, pulling him closer until there was no space left between them. The night unfolded like a dream, each kiss more fervent than the last as they explored each other's bodies with an urgency that felt both thrilling and inevitable. Clothes were shed in a flurry of passion until they were left breathless on the couch, lost in each other's embrace. As dawn began to break outside Julian's window, casting soft light across the room, Ethan lay tangled in sheets beside Julian, a man who had gone from stranger to lover in just a few hours. He felt an overwhelming sense of happiness mixed with uncertainty about what this meant for their future. But as he turned to look at Julian sleeping peacefully beside him, his features softened by morning light, Ethan couldn't shake off an unsettling thought. What would happen when they returned to reality? What would it mean for their professional lives? With those questions swirling in his mind, Ethan closed his eyes and drifted into sleep beside the man who had unexpectedly turned his world upside down. The morning sun streamed through the large windows of Ethan's apartment, casting a warm glow that felt both comforting and disorienting. He stirred awake, memories of the night flooding back in vivid detail. The taste of Julian's lips, the heat of their bodies pressed together, it all felt like a beautiful dream. But as reality set in, Ethan's heart sank with the weight of uncertainty. He quickly got out of bed, trying to shake off the lingering feelings of euphoria mixed with anxiety. What did this mean for him? Julian was his boss, after all. The thought sent a shiver down his spine. Would their passionate encounter change everything at work? Would it complicate his career? After a quick shower and a strong cup of coffee, Ethan dressed in his usual business attire, sharp and professional. He glanced at his reflection in the mirror, trying to muster confidence despite the butterflies in his stomach. Today would be challenging. He had to face Julian at the office. The bustling streets of Manhattan greeted him as he stepped outside. The city was alive with its usual energy, but Ethan felt detached, lost in his thoughts. Arriving at Hart Marketing, he took a deep breath before entering the building, mentally preparing himself for whatever lay ahead. As he walked through the sleek lobby, he spotted Maya waiting for him by the elevator. Her eyes lit up as she saw him. "Ethan, you look like you've just come from a whirlwind romance," she teased, nudging him playfully. Ethan chuckled nervously, but the laughter quickly faded. "You have no idea," he replied, trying to keep his tone light. Maya raised an eyebrow knowingly. "Oh, do tell." Before he could respond, the elevator doors opened and they stepped inside. Ethan pressed the button for their floor and turned to Maya, who was watching him intently. "It's complicated," he finally admitted. "Complicated how?" she prodded. "I hooked up with Julian last night," he blurted out before he could think better of it. Maya's eyes widened in surprise. "No way. Your boss. Wow. How do you feel about it?" "I don't know," Ethan confessed, running a hand through his hair. "It was amazing, but now I'm worried about what it means for work." Maya nodded thoughtfully. "You need to talk to him about it. Set some boundaries or figure out what you both want." Ethan sighed as they reached their floor and stepped out. Into the office. The atmosphere was buzzing with activity as colleagues chatted and worked diligently at their desks. He felt a knot tighten in his stomach as he approached his workspace. Moments later, Julian walked into the office, looking impeccably put together as always. His presence commanded attention, conversations hushed as people turned to acknowledge him. Ethan's heart raced as their eyes met across the room. Julian offered a subtle smile that sent warmth coursing through Ethan's veins but also filled him with apprehension. He couldn't help but wonder if anyone else could sense the tension between them. "Ethan," Julian called out as he approached, his voice smooth yet authoritative. "Can we talk in my office?" Ethan nodded, feeling a mix of excitement and dread as he followed Julian down the hallway. Once inside Julian's spacious office, decorated with modern art and sleek furniture, Ethan took a seat across from him. "About last night," Julian began, leaning forward slightly, his expression serious yet inviting. Ethan swallowed hard, searching for words that didn't seem to come easily. "I think we need to discuss what happened," he finally managed. Julian nodded slowly, his gaze steady on Ethan's face. "I agree. It was unexpected but also incredible." He paused for a moment before continuing, "But we need to be cautious about how we handle this at work." Ethan felt a rush of relief mixed with disappointment at Julian's words. It seemed they were on the same page regarding professionalism, but what about their connection? "So, what does that mean for us?" Ethan asked tentatively. Julian leaned back in his chair, contemplating his response. "I want to explore this further," he said carefully. "But we have to keep things discreet until we figure out what this really is." The air between them crackled with unspoken emotions as Ethan processed Julian's words. He wanted more than just secrecy, he craved an authentic connection that transcended their roles at work. "I understand," Ethan replied slowly, trying to mask his disappointment with professionalism. "I just hope this doesn't affect our work dynamic." Julian smiled reassuringly. "It won't if we're careful." There was a warmth in his eyes that made Ethan feel hopeful again. As they discussed upcoming projects and strategies for their marketing campaign, Ethan found himself captivated by Julian's passion and intellect once more. They worked seamlessly together, exchanging ideas and laughter that made time fly by. But beneath the surface of their professional interaction lay an undercurrent of tension and desire that neither could ignore completely. Later that day, during lunch with Maya at a nearby cafe, Ethan recounted his conversation with Julian. She listened intently while sipping her iced tea. "So you're both on board with keeping things under wraps?" she asked after he finished explaining. "For now," Ethan replied thoughtfully. "But I can't help feeling like I want more than just secret meetings." Maya raised her eyebrows knowingly. "That's understandable. Just be careful not to get too emotionally invested too quickly." Ethan nodded but couldn't shake off the feeling that something deeper was brewing between them, a connection that felt undeniable despite their circumstances. As they finished lunch and headed back to the office, Ethan couldn't help but glance at his phone every few minutes, half expecting a message from Julian that would change everything again. The rest of the day passed in a blur of meetings and deadlines until finally it was time to leave work behind for the day. As he gathered his things, Ethan felt a mix of anticipation and anxiety about what tomorrow would bring. Would they continue navigating this complicated relationship? And if so, where would it lead them? With those questions swirling in his mind like autumn leaves caught in a gust of wind, Ethan stepped out into the bustling streets of New York City once more, his heart racing not just from uncertainty but from hope for what lay ahead. The following week unfolded with a strange mix of excitement and tension. Ethan found himself caught in a whirlwind of emotions as he navigated his professional life at Heart Marketing while trying to keep his feelings for Julian under wraps. Each day brought new challenges, but the thrill of their secret connection lingered like a sweet aftertaste. On Monday morning, Ethan arrived at the office early, hoping to catch Julian before the day got hectic. He wanted to discuss their upcoming marketing conference in Chicago, a trip that could be pivotal for both their careers and their budding relationship. As he settled at his desk, he felt a flutter of nerves in his stomach. Just as he was about to lose himself in work, Julian appeared in the doorway of Ethan's cubicle, looking effortlessly handsome in a fitted blazer. "Hey, Ethan," he said, his voice smooth and warm. "Got a minute?" Ethan's heart raced at the sight of him. "Of course. I was just thinking about our Chicago trip." Julian stepped inside and leaned against the cubicle wall, crossing his arms casually. "I was thinking we should make this conference not just about work but also about us. It could be a chance to explore what we have together, away from the office." Ethan felt a rush of excitement mixed with apprehension. "You mean, like, together?" he asked, trying to gauge Julian's intentions. Julian smiled, his eyes sparkling with mischief. "Exactly. We can keep it low-key, but I want to spend time with you outside of work, get to know each other better." Ethan's pulse quickened at the thought. The idea of being alone with Julian in a different city sent shivers down his spine. "That sounds amazing," he replied, unable to hide his enthusiasm. "Great. Let's plan for dinner and maybe some sightseeing," Julian suggested, his tone playful yet sincere. As they discussed logistics for the trip, Ethan felt a sense of ease wash over him. This was more than just an office fling, it was evolving into something deeper, something worth exploring. They finalized their plans before Julian had to head into a meeting. "Can't wait for Chicago," Julian said with a wink before walking away, leaving Ethan grinning like an idiot. The days leading up to the conference flew by in a blur of preparations and anticipation. Ethan spent late nights finalizing presentations and coordinating with team members while secretly counting down the hours until he would be alone with Julian. Finally, Friday arrived. Ethan packed his suitcase with care, choosing outfits that he hoped would impress Julian while still keeping things professional. As he zipped up his bag, he felt a mixture of nervousness and excitement coursing through him. At the airport terminal, Ethan spotted Julian waiting near their gate, looking effortlessly stylish in dark jeans and a fitted shirt that accentuated his broad shoulders. The moment their eyes met, a smile broke across Julian's face that made Ethan's heart skip a beat. "Ready for an adventure?" Julian asked as they approached each other. "Absolutely," Ethan replied, trying to sound confident despite the butterflies fluttering in his stomach. The flight was filled with light banter and laughter as they shared stories about their lives outside of work. The chemistry between them was undeniable, every shared glance felt charged with unspoken desire. Once they arrived in Chicago and checked into their hotel, a chic downtown establishment, Ethan felt a thrill of anticipation for what lay ahead. After dropping off their bags, they decided to explore the city before dinner. Walking through the bustling streets hand in hand felt exhilarating and liberating. The architecture of Chicago captivated them as they strolled along the Riverwalk, taking in the stunning skyline illuminated by the setting sun. "I love this city," Julian said as they paused to take in the view. "It has so much character." Ethan nodded in agreement but couldn't help but focus more on Julian than the scenery around them. "Yeah, it's beautiful, but not as beautiful as you," he blurted out before he could stop himself. Julian turned to him, surprise flickering across his face before it melted into a warm smile. "Flattery will get you everywhere," he teased lightly. They continued walking until they found a cozy restaurant with outdoor seating. As they settled at their table under twinkling fairy lights, Ethan felt an overwhelming sense of happiness wash over him. This was exactly what he had hoped for, a chance to connect with Julian on a deeper level. Over dinner, they shared stories about their childhoods and dreams for the future. Ethan found himself opening up more than he ever expected. There was something about Julian that made him feel safe and understood. "Do you ever think about what you want outside of work?" Julian asked thoughtfully as they finished their meal. Ethan hesitated for a moment before answering honestly. "I want to find someone who gets me, someone I can share my life with." He met Julian's gaze directly, feeling vulnerable yet hopeful. Julian reached across the table and took Ethan's hand in his own. "I think we're both looking for something real," he said softly. "And I want to see where this goes." The sincerity in Julian's voice sent warmth flooding through Ethan's chest. They spent the rest of the evening talking and laughing until they were kicked out of the restaurant when it closed down for the night. As they walked back toward their hotel under the starry sky, Ethan felt an undeniable pull toward Julian, a magnetic force that drew them closer together until they were walking shoulder to shoulder. When they reached their hotel room door, Ethan turned to face Julian, feeling both exhilarated and nervous about what might happen next. "So, what now?" he asked softly. Julian stepped closer, brushing his fingers against Ethan's cheek gently. "Now we enjoy each other's company without any distractions." With that invitation hanging in the air between them, Ethan felt his heart race as Julian leaned in closer until their lips met once again, softly at first but quickly deepening into something more passionate and intense. Time seemed to stand still as they lost themselves in each other once more, the world outside fading away until there was nothing but them. In that moment, everything felt right, all doubts melted away as desire took over completely. As they finally pulled apart breathlessly, Ethan realized that this trip had transformed everything between them. It wasn't just about secrecy anymore, it was about connection and possibility. And as they stepped into this new chapter together, Ethan couldn't help but feel hopeful for what lay ahead, a journey filled with love intertwined with ambition. The next morning, Ethan awoke to the soft rays of sunlight streaming through the hotel curtains. He turned to find Julian still asleep beside him, his features relaxed and peaceful. A sense of contentment washed over Ethan as he took a moment to admire the man who had unexpectedly become so important to him. After a quick shower, Ethan dressed and quietly slipped out to grab coffee from a nearby cafe. The city was waking up, and the streets buzzed with activity as people hurried to start their day. With a steaming cup in hand, he returned to the hotel room, feeling invigorated. Julian was awake now, propped up on one elbow, looking adorably disheveled. "You're a lifesaver," he said with a sleepy smile as Ethan handed him the coffee. They shared breakfast in bed, laughing and teasing each other about their respective morning routines. It felt natural and easy, like they had been doing this for years rather than just days. After finishing their meal, they decided to prepare for the marketing conference that would begin later in the afternoon. As they dressed for the day, Ethan couldn't help but steal glances at Julian. He looked sharp in a tailored suit that accentuated his broad shoulders and slim waist. The sight made Ethan's heart race. He felt lucky to be with someone so captivating. Once they arrived at the conference venue, the atmosphere was electric with energy. Attendees mingled in the lobby, exchanging business cards and ideas while vendors set up their booths. Ethan felt a rush of adrenaline as he and Julian navigated through the crowd. "Remember," Julian said as they approached their booth, "we're here to impress potential clients but also to learn from others. Let's keep it professional." Ethan nodded, though he could feel excitement bubbling beneath the surface. They spent the morning networking and attending workshops, sharing insights and strategies with colleagues from other companies. Julian's charisma shone through as he engaged with others, effortlessly making connections. During a break between sessions, they found a quiet corner where they could catch their breath. "How are you holding up?" Julian asked, leaning against a wall. "I'm good. This is actually really inspiring," Ethan replied. "I love hearing different perspectives on marketing." Julian smiled knowingly. "You've always had that passion for it. It's one of the things I admire about you." Ethan felt warmth spread through him at Julian's words. "Thanks. That means a lot coming from you." As they chatted about their favorite sessions so far, Ethan noticed Marcus Steele, a rival from another firm, approaching them with an air of confidence that made Ethan uneasy. Marcus was known for his cutthroat tactics and had always been competitive with Julian. "Julian, fancy seeing you here," Marcus said with a smirk as he reached them. His eyes flicked between Julian and Ethan, assessing. "Marcus," Julian replied coolly, his tone professional but guarded. Ethan felt tension crackle in the air as Marcus continued, "I see you've brought your little protege along." He gestured dismissively toward Ethan before locking eyes with Julian again. "I hope you're not too distracted by personal matters while we're here." Ethan's stomach twisted at Marcus's insinuation. He could feel Julian stiffen beside him, but before he could react, Julian spoke up firmly. "Ethan is not just my protege, he's an integral part of our team," Julian said sharply. "And I suggest you keep your comments to yourself if you want to maintain any semblance of professionalism." Marcus raised an eyebrow but didn't back down completely. "Just looking out for you, Julian. Wouldn't want your judgment clouded by personal interests." With that, he turned on his heel and walked away, leaving an uncomfortable silence hanging between them. Ethan glanced at Julian, who looked visibly tense. "I'm sorry about that," he said quietly. Julian sighed deeply, running a hand through his hair in frustration. "Marcus has always been like this, trying to undermine me at every turn." He paused before adding more softly, "But I won't let him get to me." Ethan felt a surge of admiration for Julian's resolve but also concern for how this rivalry might affect their relationship moving forward. "Are you okay?" he asked gently. "I will be," Julian replied with a small smile that didn't quite reach his eyes. "Let's focus on what we came here for." The rest of the day passed in a blur of presentations and discussions about innovative marketing strategies. Despite the earlier confrontation with Marcus, Ethan found himself enjoying every moment spent with Julian, especially during their private conversations when they could let their guard down. As evening approached and the conference wrapped up for the day, they attended a networking dinner hosted by one of the sponsors. The ambiance was lively, laughter filled the air as people mingled over delicious food and drinks. Ethan felt more relaxed now that they were away from the formalities of presentations and meetings. He watched as Julian effortlessly navigated conversations with other professionals while still making time to check in with him. "Are you having fun?" Julian asked during a lull in the conversation as they stood together at the edge of the room. "Absolutely. It's great to meet so many interesting people," Ethan replied genuinely. Julian leaned closer, lowering his voice slightly so only Ethan could hear. "I'm glad we came together, this has been amazing." Their eyes locked for a moment that felt charged with unspoken feelings before Maya appeared beside them, breaking the spell. "There you two are. I've been looking for you," she exclaimed cheerfully before turning serious upon noticing Julian standing there. "Oh, hi. I didn't realize you were here too." "Hey Maya," Julian said warmly but slightly guarded. Ethan sensed an awkwardness creeping into their interaction but quickly redirected the conversation back to work-related topics before it could escalate further. As dinner concluded and people began to disperse into smaller groups or head back to their hotels, Ethan felt a mix of exhilaration and exhaustion wash over him. "Want to grab a drink somewhere quieter?" Julian suggested as they stepped outside into the cool Chicago night air. "Yes, that sounds perfect," Ethan replied eagerly. They found a cozy bar nearby where they settled into a secluded booth away from prying eyes. As they sipped cocktails and shared stories about their lives outside of work, Julian recounting tales from his college days while Ethan shared funny anecdotes from his childhood, the atmosphere shifted back to one of intimacy and connection. But amidst their laughter, Ethan couldn't shake off thoughts about Marcus's earlier comments. How would this rivalry impact them? Would it put pressure on their relationship? As if sensing his unease, Julian reached across the table and took Ethan's hand in his own, a simple gesture that sent warmth coursing through him once more. "We'll figure this out together," he said softly yet confidently. Ethan nodded slowly but felt reassured by Julian's words, and by this moment shared between them under dim lights surrounded by laughter and chatter from other patrons. They finished their drinks and decided to take a walk along Lake Michigan's shoreline, a peaceful contrast to the bustling city around them. The moonlight shimmered on the water's surface as waves lapped gently against the shore. In that serene setting, everything felt right again. All doubts faded away under stars twinkling brightly above them like promises yet unfulfilled, but full of potential nonetheless. As they strolled side by side, hands intertwined, Ethan realized that despite any challenges ahead, he wanted nothing more than to explore this connection further, to see where it might lead them both professionally, and personally too. The following morning, Ethan awoke to the sound of soft waves lapping against the shore outside their hotel room. The sun filtered through the curtains, casting a warm glow across the space. He turned to find Julian still asleep, his features relaxed and peaceful. A sense of contentment settled in Ethan's chest as he reflected on the previous night's adventures. After a quick shower, Ethan dressed and decided to let Julian sleep a little longer. He slipped out to grab breakfast from a nearby cafe, eager to bring back pastries and coffee for both of them. The city was alive with energy, and Ethan felt a renewed sense of excitement about their trip. When he returned, Julian was sitting up in bed, rubbing the sleep from his eyes. "You're a lifesaver," he said with a sleepy smile as Ethan placed the food on the bedside table. "I figured you'd appreciate a good breakfast," Ethan replied, grinning as he handed Julian a steaming cup of coffee. As they ate together, their conversation flowed easily, filled with laughter and teasing. It felt so natural, like they had known each other forever. But beneath the surface of their easy camaraderie lay an undercurrent of tension that Ethan couldn't ignore. The shadow of Marcus Steele loomed over them, and Ethan wondered how their rivalry would impact their relationship moving forward. After breakfast, they prepared for the second day of the conference. The agenda promised more engaging sessions and networking opportunities, but Ethan felt a knot of anxiety forming in his stomach as he thought about facing Marcus again. When they arrived at the venue, the atmosphere buzzed with anticipation. Attendees mingled in clusters, exchanging ideas and insights. As they made their way through the crowd toward their booth, Ethan spotted Marcus across the room, deep in conversation with another marketing executive. "Just ignore him," Julian said quietly as he noticed Ethan's gaze lingering on Marcus. "He thrives on creating tension." Ethan nodded but couldn't shake off the feeling that Marcus would find a way to undermine them again. They set up their booth and prepared for the day ahead, diving into discussions about innovative marketing strategies and trends. As the morning progressed, they attended several workshops that sparked lively debates and discussions among attendees. Julian's sharp insights impressed everyone around him, and Ethan felt proud to be by his side. During one session about digital marketing trends, Marcus approached them once more, this time with an air of false friendliness that made Ethan bristle. "Julian, great to see you again," he said smoothly, his eyes flicking between Julian and Ethan. "Marcus," Julian replied curtly, his tone betraying no warmth. "I hope you're not letting personal matters distract you from your work," Marcus said with a smirk that made Ethan's blood boil. Julian took a step closer to Marcus, his expression hardening. "Ethan is an invaluable part of my team," he stated firmly. "I suggest you keep your comments to yourself." Ethan watched as Marcus's expression shifted from smugness to annoyance before he turned on his heel and walked away. The tension hung heavily in the air between them. "Are you okay?" Ethan asked softly once Marcus was out of earshot. "I'm fine," Julian replied with a sigh but didn't meet Ethan's gaze immediately. "He just knows how to push my buttons." Ethan felt a surge of empathy for Julian, it was clear how much Marcus affected him. "You don't have to let him get to you," he said gently. "You're doing amazing work here." Julian finally looked at him, gratitude shining in his eyes. "Thanks for saying that." He reached out and squeezed Ethan's hand briefly before they returned to their discussions about marketing strategies. As the day wore on, they continued to network and attend sessions together, but Ethan couldn't shake off the feeling that something was brewing beneath the surface, both between him and Julian and within their professional environment. That evening, after another successful day at the conference filled with engaging discussions and networking opportunities, they decided to unwind at a nearby bar known for its vibrant atmosphere. They found a cozy corner booth where they could relax away from the bustle of the conference crowd. As they settled in with drinks in hand, Julian leaned back against the plush seat, looking more relaxed than he had all day. "This feels nice," he said with a contented sigh. Ethan smiled warmly at him. "It really does." He took a sip of his drink before continuing cautiously. "But I can't shake off how tense things have been with Marcus." Julian's expression darkened slightly at the mention of his rival's name. "I know he's trying to get under my skin," he admitted. "But I won't let him ruin what we have." Ethan felt a surge of warmth at those words. Julian was choosing him over the drama surrounding them. "I appreciate that," he said earnestly. "I want us to focus on each other." Julian reached across the table again, taking Ethan's hand in his own. Their fingers intertwined naturally as if they were meant to fit together like this. "I want that too," he said softly. They shared stories about their lives outside work. Julian talked about growing up in a small town in Texas while Ethan shared tales from his childhood in New York City, and laughter filled their corner booth as they connected on deeper levels. But just as things began to feel perfect again, Maya arrived unexpectedly at the bar with her own group of friends from another firm attending the conference. "Hey, there you are," she exclaimed cheerfully as she spotted them across the room. She approached their table with excitement but paused when she noticed how close Julian was sitting next to Ethan. "Hi Maya." Julian greeted her warmly but maintained an air of professionalism that made Ethan feel slightly uneasy. Maya raised an eyebrow playfully but quickly shifted her attention back to Ethan. "How's it going? How was your day?" "It was great. Really productive," Ethan replied while stealing glances at Julian beside him. Maya seemed oblivious to any tension as she chatted animatedly about her own experiences at the conference while also trying to catch up with both men. But as conversations flowed around them, filled with laughter and camaraderie, Ethan couldn't help but feel like something important was being overshadowed by Maya's presence. There were things left unsaid between him and Julian that needed addressing without distractions nearby. Finally, after Maya excused herself momentarily to grab drinks for her friends, Julian leaned closer toward Ethan, a serious expression crossing his face. "We need to talk about what happened earlier today," he said quietly but firmly enough for only Ethan to hear. Ethan nodded slowly. He understood what needed addressing. The tension surrounding them wasn't going away unless they confronted it directly together. As Maya returned shortly after with drinks for everyone else, and before any further conversations could unfold, Ethan felt an overwhelming sense of urgency building within him. There was so much left unsaid between him and Julian that needed clarity before returning home from this trip together. The night continued with laughter echoing around them, but deep down inside both men knew that tomorrow would bring new challenges, and perhaps even more confrontations with Marcus, that would test their budding relationship further than ever before. The final day of the conference dawned bright and clear, but Ethan felt a storm brewing within him. The previous night had been filled with laughter and camaraderie, yet the unresolved tension between him and Julian loomed over them like a dark cloud. As they prepared for the day ahead, Ethan couldn't shake off the feeling that they needed to address the issues that had been simmering beneath the surface. After a quick breakfast in their hotel room, they headed to the conference venue. The atmosphere buzzed with excitement as attendees gathered for the last round of sessions and networking opportunities. Ethan could sense Julian's focus was sharp, but he also noticed a flicker of worry in his eyes. "Are you ready for today?" Julian asked as they walked through the bustling lobby. Ethan took a deep breath, steeling himself. "I think we need to talk about Marcus and how it's affecting us," he said, choosing his words carefully. Julian's expression shifted slightly, a mix of concern and understanding crossing his face. "You're right. We can't let him dictate how we feel about each other," he replied firmly. They found a quiet corner away from the crowd, where they could speak without interruptions. Ethan felt his heart race as he faced Julian, determined to address the elephant in the room. "I know Marcus is trying to get under your skin," Ethan began, his voice steady but soft. "But I don't want this rivalry to come between us. I care about you too much." Julian stepped closer, his gaze intense. "I care about you too, Ethan. But Marcus knows how to push my buttons, and I won't let him ruin what we have." Ethan nodded, feeling a swell of affection for Julian's determination. I just want us to be strong together, no matter what challenges come our way. Julian reached out and took Ethan's hand in his own, their fingers intertwining naturally. We will be, he said with conviction. Let's not allow anyone else to interfere with our connection. With that promise hanging in the air between them, they returned to the conference with renewed energy and focus. They attended sessions that inspired them both, discussing innovative marketing strategies and trends while sharing ideas that felt electric. As the day progressed, they found themselves at their booth again, engaging with potential clients and partners who were impressed by their dynamic teamwork. The chemistry between them was palpable, they moved seamlessly together, each anticipating the other's thoughts and actions. But as afternoon turned into evening and the conference began to wind down, Marcus reappeared like a shadow lurking at the edges of their success. He approached their booth with a smug smile that made Ethan bristle. Looks like you two are having quite a day, Marcus remarked, his tone dripping with sarcasm. Julian straightened up, ready to defend their partnership. We are indeed, he replied coolly. Marcus leaned in slightly, his voice low enough for only them to hear. Just remember, personal relationships can complicate business matters. His eyes flicked between Julian and Ethan as if trying to provoke a reaction. Ethan felt anger bubbling up inside him but forced himself to remain calm. We're professionals first, he said firmly. And we won't let anyone undermine our work. Julian shot Ethan an appreciative glance before turning back to Marcus with unwavering confidence. If you have nothing constructive to say, I suggest you move along. Marcus smirked but didn't press further. Instead, he turned on his heel and walked away, leaving Ethan and Julian standing together in solidarity. Nice job, Julian said quietly as soon as Marcus was out of earshot. Ethan felt a rush of adrenaline at having stood up to Marcus alongside Julian. Thanks, I just couldn't let him get to us anymore. As they wrapped up their final discussions at the conference, Ethan felt a sense of accomplishment wash over him, not just for their professional success but also for how far they had come together personally. Later that evening, after saying goodbye to colleagues and exchanging contact information with potential clients, they decided to celebrate their achievements with dinner at a chic restaurant overlooking Lake Michigan. Seated at a table by the window, they enjoyed delicious food while reminiscing about their favorite moments from the conference. Laughter filled the air as they recounted amusing anecdotes from their time together, each story drawing them closer. As dessert arrived, a decadent chocolate cake that they shared, Ethan looked across the table at Julian, feeling grateful for everything that had unfolded during this trip. I'm really glad we did this, Ethan said sincerely. It's been incredible getting to know you better. Julian smiled warmly, his eyes sparkling under the dim lights of the restaurant. Me too. This trip has changed everything for me. Ethan's heart raced at those words. It felt like an invitation to explore something deeper than just casual encounters or office flirtation. Can I ask you something? Ethan ventured cautiously. Of course, Julian replied attentively. What do you see happening after this? When we get back home? Ethan asked, holding his breath as he awaited Julian's response. Julian paused for a moment before answering thoughtfully. I want us to be open about what we have. No more hiding or pretending it's just business. He leaned forward slightly, intensity radiating from him. I want us to explore this relationship fully. Ethan felt warmth spread through him at Julian's words, a mixture of relief and joy flooding his senses. I want that too, he said earnestly. With unspoken understanding hanging between them like an electric charge in the air, they finished their meal before stepping outside into the cool night air, a perfect backdrop for what lay ahead. As they walked along Lake Michigan's shoreline hand in hand under stars twinkling brightly above them, Ethan felt hopeful about their future together, no longer burdened by fear or uncertainty but instead embracing possibilities yet uncharted. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, but tonight was theirs alone, a chance to celebrate love amidst ambition, a journey worth taking together no matter where it might lead them next.